Here's a map of Kentucky, and here it is with a cool little peeled edge area of interest effect. Because sometimes you might just want your map's area of interest to have a little raised peeled edge effect. Here's my base map for this little experiment. I'll add world hillshade with soft light blend mode and a reference layer with a screen blend mode. Then I'll search Living Atlas for a layer called states. Ooh, the census, I've heard of them, I'll take it. I'll just rename this layer and then get rid of the default transparency that it came along with. Then I'll add a quick definition query to filter my view to only Kentucky. Okay, now I've got a base map and on top of that, my area of interest. Now I need to give it a shadow effect. And I'll do this using the polygon's symbology. I'll jump over to the structure tab and drag the outline to be underneath the fill. And then I'll make that outline a gradient stroke. And I'm gonna make it a really thick stroke, 60 points. And as you've seen me do about 837 times on this channel, I'll make this gradient go from fully transparent black to regular black. And I'm gonna tweak this gradient by opening up its color scheme properties, and I'll bring the black a little bit closer to the middle. I'll add a couple of stops and I'll taper them closer to the middle too, so it's more naturalistic, like a shadow would be. And lastly, I'll make the fill white. So we have a white fill on top of a semi-transparent black gradient. In Photoshop, you'd call something like this an adjustment layer, and we'll use a blend mode to adjust it right in. So if I give this layer a blend mode from any of the darkening modes, I only see the shadow. And that's cool and practical and useful, but how do we make it weird? Like it's a sticker peeling up off of its surface. I'm not really ready for that blend mode just yet, so let me turn that off and set the blend back to normal. And I'm gonna duplicate this layer by clicking the Control key and dragging. And for this topmost layer, I'm gonna get rid of that thick, shadowy gradient. And for the white fill, I'm gonna give it an effect of offset. This is a way of expanding that fill outside of its actual geography. And I'll give it a generous 60-point offset. It just has to completely cover up the shadow of the layer beneath it. And then I'll change this topmost solid fill to a gradient fill. And I'll make it go from transparent white to fully opaque white. And by default, that gradient is a buffered fill instead of a linear fill. I'm gonna set that gradient to be linear. And instead of discrete, which is a certain number of bands, I'll make it continuous, so it's a smooth gradient. Oh, let me switch this gradient so it's opaque at the bottom and transparent at the top. And those are the two layers that we need for our peeled area of interest shadow effect. To review, we have two layers. The first one has a white fill and a semi-transparent black shadow effect. And the layer on top of that is linear gradient white with an offset effect so that it covers up the shadow layer underneath. The trick is to group these two layers and apply a blend mode to that single group. So I'll just select both of these layers, right click and choose group. I'll rename it, and then I'll give the group layer a blend mode of multiply. Only the darkness is retained. A peeled edge, we did it! The rest is just gravy. Here's how to pour on that gravy. Say, for example, you want to change the angle of the shadow. Right now it's 90 degrees or straight up. I can change this to like 70 degrees to make it a little bit offset to the right. Or maybe you'd like to add a second shadow that's a little bit bigger with a slightly different angle. Just duplicate this shadow effect and play with the symbology settings for the shadow and the cover-up layers. As long as that cover-up layer's offset is as thick as the shadow, you'll be fine. And you can play with different darkening blend modes like color burn, that's a good one. You can create some pretty cool and interesting lighting effects with this peeled edge area of interest. Anyway, have fun, try new things, and don't just make your maps pop off the page, make them peel off the page.